Welcome to One-on-One, the Daily Items weekly digital program featuring Susquehanna Valley newsmakers, interviewed by Daily Item reporters. Today's guest is retired Bucknell ecologist Dr. Warren Abrahamson, interviewed by reporter Justin Strasser.
The Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, Certified Hyundai and Lincoln Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Ian Chakosky, Certified Ford Sales Professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford Certified Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Justin Strasser. Our guest today is retired Bucknell University ecologist Dr. Warren Abrahamson. Thanks for joining us today.
Justin, pleasure to be here.
You prefer to be called Abe?
That's great.
Okay. So you're involved with the Merrill Lynn Conservancy. Tell us what that is and how you're involved with that.
Yeah. The Merrill Lynn Conservancy was founded back in 1988, and it has worked in really our four county regions. So we're talking about Union, Northumberland, Snyder, and up into Lycoming County. That's kind of the area that we work. And our mission is really trying to protect and preserve natural landscapes. And we have an affiliate, the Buffalo Creek Watershed Alliance, and together with them, we really are very interested in trying to protect the natural landscape as well as our waterways in the area. So we do that in a variety of ways.
What sort of ways do you do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. There's actually a number of things. Let me start with a project the Buffalo Creek Watershed Alliance got going some years ago, and this involves Buffalo Creek, which of course is a major tributary to the Susquehanna River, to the West Branch.
Up Union County?
Yeah, so it comes right off the ridge out by Laurelton, and then runs on down and goes in right at Lewisburg. Anyway, it was impacted by acid precipitation. The rocks of that particular ridge are Tuscarora sandstone, which does not have much buffering capability. So the stream turns so acidic, the brook trout and many other native insects and animals could no longer live there. So the Buffalo Creek Watershed Alliance actually put together grant money to create a buffering pond. And so they had designed and installed a really neat pond that has restored the chemistry, so we've gotten the pH lowered. The stream now has brook trout all the way back up in toward the headwaters. So
a success story.
That's one real neat thing. The Lynn Conservancy, on the other hand, has been a little more involved with, wetlands, but also drylands, and so landscape. And the Lynn Conservancy has protected since 1988 almost 1,600 acres of our local landscape. And that's been done through a combination of methods. One is conservation easements, and that's one we use a lot. In a conservation easement, a landowner is able to really prevent future development or change in the use of that land. So the development rights would be transferred to a conservancy, and in return the conservancy commits in perpetuity to protect the wishes of that landowner. Each of these easements are negotiated with individual landowners. It's not one package fits all. But in any case, that helps protect both agricultural lands as well as forest lands. And of course, forest lands are super important to us as far as clean water, clean air. They do a lot of good things for us. They provide a lot of recreation for us, and they're home to a lot of animals and plants that we share planet Earth with.
Now, whenever I think of the Merrill Lynn Conservancy, I always think about Shikellamy Overlook.
Yeah.
Is that closely related then?
Absolutely.
I mean, we have this is the view from right there.
What a great view. Yeah.
How are those two interlocked?
Well, the Shikellamy Bluffs were on our radar very early on. It turns out that there are some endangered plants that live on Shikellamy Bluffs.
We had Chris Martino on here to talk about those.
Great. Well,
a couple weeks ago.
Indeed. Well, Chris will tell you then all kinds of details that I won't go into, but suffice it to say that we've got these endangered plants. We also have a very special bird. Peregrine falcon shows up there. And,
Okay.
so it's a historic nesting site. So those bluffs are ecologically very important. It's a habitat. The side that you see from Norrie looking over, that's an environment and a habitat that you just don't see many places in Pennsylvania. So it's very special. It's got very special organisms. Well, a number of years ago, the Conservancy became aware of a couple of parcels there that were in private hands, and we continued conversations with the landowners, and the Conservancy was able to facilitate, in one case, the purchase of one of those properties, and then we turned that property over to the Shikellamy State Park. So it became, it's there forever, and the other property, we were one of the partners, and this is a neat story with the Conservancy. The Conservancy has been really able to work with government agencies. For example, the Union County government has just been super. Sean McLaughlin and the commissioners, John Showers, have just been super people to work with on these kind of projects. And they worked with us on another parcel up there, which we were able to help facilitate, and that also was transferred. So about 100 and almost 20 acres of that face and up above plateau was transferred to Shikellamy State Park. So it more than doubled the area that we have as a state park. What a legacy for this region and generations to come. So I just stress that's one of the things that the Conservancy really does. It's a forward-looking organization. We're always thinking generations ahead. You know, what options will people have in this region? We'd love to think that we've got a lot of good resources here, and if we take good care of them, generations to come will have those resources to use.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful view from up there.
It's super.
My cousin last year got married up there, and
excellent.
You know, whenever people come to visit, we always take them up there to
you
know, take a look, because it's a beautiful view and it's great.
Exactly.
Now, there's something that you have worked on called linking landscapes.
Exactly.
Can you kind of explain what that is and how that applies to what we've been talking about?
Well, the Shikellamy Bluff is a great example.
Okay.
Where I want to back up just a little bit and talk a little bit about conservation biology theory. One of the things that we know over time, as human populations have increased, the area of natural landscape has declined as we've converted it into housing, subdivisions, golf courses, you know, agriculture, and so on. And with that has also come fragmentation. So in other words, we've created little land islands. So we've got a forest here patch, we've got another patch over here, but they're separated from each other. And one of the things that we know from conservation biology is that the biodiversity, that is the richness of species that occur in a region, are very much dependent on the area available. So if we decline in area, we will also see a subsequent loss of species. There are many classic studies, but the one that is always kind of interesting to cite, because people can recognize it immediately, is an island called Barrow, Colorado Island, which was created from a mountain down in Panama. So when the Panama Canal was created in the early 1900s, they created a big lake. And that's part of the canal. So when you get up on the top part, go through all the locks, there's this big lake. Well, Barrow, Colorado was a mountain, but it became an island surrounded by this large lake. And it became a reserve. And so it's part of Smithsonian, and there's a lot of research that's gone on there since 1923. And one of the things they did was follow large predators. Well, the jaguar and puma were lost very quickly from that island. They just couldn't survive. There wasn't enough area. Bird species, there were over 200 species that frequented that mountain. But as it declined in size and became isolated, within 80 years, we lost about 65 species that don't occur there anymore. Plants have done the same kind of thing. So it shows this relationship. So linking landscapes is about making those connections. If, for example, at Shikellamy Bluffs, if you can more than double the area, that means we can support a lot more biodiversity. So if we've got endangered species, we do much better if we've got more area. So that was a real win-win. We have a conservation easement on many properties that adjoin other protected lands. So, for example, we did one with the Stall property in western Union County, and that's a several hundred, about 240 some acre farm with beautiful woodlands, but it's adjacent to farms that are in ag preservation. So it creates this agricultural, what should we call it, sort of enclave that now is protected in perpetuity. We also have a property on Shamokin Mountain, which is just south of Lewisburg, that adjoins, it's a 43-acre parcel, but we were real excited about it because it adjoins state game land. And so there's a several hundred-acre state game land, but the addition of that easement added significantly, and again, it increases the area we can support more species. So one of the things that our initiative, it's a long-term initiative, and what we're doing is we're really looking at greenways, we're looking at corridors, ways that we can try to manage these connections so that animals can migrate from one natural habitat to another. Pollen of plants or insect pollinators can move from one to the other. That's really important.
So bees are...
Exactly. And, sometimes people, I think we get a little annoyed with insects sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Insects get kind of a bad rap, and yet we fail to kind of realize sometimes that, hey, these guys are really saving our food table. If we didn't have native bees, for example, and even the exotic honeybee, those pollinate a lot of our crops. And so, I enjoy my apples and
Same.
Cherries and blueberries. They require pollination. And so we need those pollinators and need to take care of them. So that's an important feature.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Warren Abrahamson.
The Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, certified Hyundai and Lincoln sales consultant, Seals Bavaria High School.
Ian Chakosky, certified Ford sales professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford Certified Sales Consultant, Seals Bavaria High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
Welcome back to One-on-One. Again, we're here with Dr. Warren Abrahamson. So you're retired from Bucknell.
That's right.
And your specialty is ecology and conservation, and that deals with plants, but it's different than like a botanist. What are those differences?
Well, in a sense, I am a botanist. I do really work on plants, but I'm always looking also at things that impact plants. So I'm also an entomologist.
Okay.
So, I kind of like to look at the way in which plants and animals interact with one another. And it's kind of fun because one affects the other. And so the ecology of each is dependent on the other in a real sense.
You mentioned pollinators, bees, and,
Yeah.
and things like that. What other examples that you have of that interaction between animals and plants?
Well, there are many. Some folks in the area may really be nutty about butterflies. I mean, they are super fun to watch.
Okay.
So colorful. And there are special relationships with many of them. One of my absolute all-time favorite shrubs in the spring is spicebush. It gets these great little yellow flowers, grows in wetlands, beautiful native plant. And if you scratch its bark a little bit, it smells this beautiful spicy kind of odor. But it attracts a very special swallowtail butterfly called the spicebush swallowtail. That butterfly requires that bush and that bush alone. So plants over evolutionary time have generated a whole myriad of defenses, and insects have been able to crack the code on some of those, but they specialize. So many insects are very specialized on only one or a group of plants. There are a few generalists. Things like gypsy moth tend to be able to eat more things, but even they're limited. I mean, they can't eat everything. And so it's kind of interesting to study those relationships and see which ones are real special. The spicebush swallowtail is a classic. But we also have things like tiger swallowtails. And, of course, the monarch is the classic. And the monarch is a neat story because it has this great relationship with members of the milkweed family. Milkweeds have cardiac glycosides. That's the kind of chemicals they contain. cardiac glycosides are really tough on vertebrates. So
Okay.
here's what happens. The larva, the little caterpillar, eats that host plant. It's able to sequester, that is, it takes up those compounds, stores them, but a blue jay comes along, tries to eat that caterpillar, and boy, it is going to be vomiting. No time, it just flat out.
So then
can't
the birds
handle
know
it.
to stay away.
Yeah, and the birds learn the pattern of the larvae or the butterfly, the adult, and they will avoid it. So the cardiac glycosides actually protect the monarch, but the monarch is dependent on milkweeds. Without the milkweed, it isn't going to make it.
That's pretty cool.
So it's a pretty cool story. So we have lots of those kind of things. And, one of the things that we love to stress, and I should say that we have this land protection program that we do with the Conservancy, but the other thing is education. And we have programs reaching out not only to adults but also children, trying to help people understand nature and what it has to offer and what it is. And one of the things that's kind of fun in all of this is to think about native plants, because native plants have these relationships that I was just talking about, milkweeds, spicebush, swallowtails, and so on. But many of the exotic plants lack those.
Yeah,
And
I was going to
think-
ask you that question about the idea of bringing exotic plants in. How does
Exactly.
that affect the
Well,
area?
it's been kind of a mixed bag for us, because people love the beauty of plants, and I appreciate that totally. But we've run into some real issues with plants that we've brought from elsewhere. One example might be a plant like Japanese stillgrass, which came in. It hit Union County probably 15 years ago, roughly. The stuff is an invasive plant. It occurs along just about every roadway, every little patch of disturbed open area that you can imagine. There are many, many like that. Bush honeysuckles, which were introduced here in Pennsylvania, and bush honeysuckles they're a noxious weed now because they take over and displace the natives. Give an example. We have two tree dogwoods that are often used in landscaping. One is our native. It's Cornus florida, which is the flowering dogwood. It has many insects. I mean, hundreds of insects can feed on it. Most don't destroy it in any way. It's a very tempered relationship. But the Kusa dogwood, which is from Asia, it's also a beautiful plant that flowers and sets fruit, but it has virtually none. And so it doesn't support any of those webs of life that we see with so many other kinds of native plants. So native plants can be really crucial as stopover points for things like migrating monarch butterflies.
So the butterfly, they don't have the relationship like we just talked about with like the butterfly and the caterpillar
Exactly.
and the birds, and
Exactly.
the birds know
Yeah.
to stay away. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
so if we're thinking protecting and promoting biodiversity, we're not going to do it by planting exotics. So one of the things that we have done is offer some courses through Bucknell's lifelong learning program and on native plants and how to use them. And the Conservancy has sponsored a couple of demonstration gardens.
And you've been involved with those?
Yeah. Well,
You mentioned the one
the
when we were
one
talking
that I
earlier
was
about
involved in
Riverwoods.
was at Riverwoods, and that was a lot of fun. We created a really nice native plant garden.
That's a nursing home up in Lewisburg?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's actually more than a nursing home. It's also a senior independent living facility.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was really a fun project, and it's one that allows people to see how attractive these things can be. I mean, we just planted it. This will be its second full summer now, and the number of things that come in. We also did one in East Buffalo Township, and Diane Donato, who I know you know, Diane spearheaded that along with John Tonzatich. And that is a showpiece garden. If you go by the East Buffalo Township up in Union County municipal building, right out front, here it is, a beautiful, beautiful native plant garden. And when you walk into it, it's full of butterflies and bees, and it's a real treat to visit.
I think, was it Reptiland used to have a butterfly
they sure
garden
do.
or
They
butterfly
do. They
conservancy?
do actually a butterfly house.
They had it's parakeets now, but it was
That's
it was
right.
butterflies.
They did butterflies for a number of years. Yeah.
So then, you had talked before when we were on the phone yesterday about this project in Florida, and you called it a prescription burning.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to kind of hear a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. Well, I got started working in Florida back in 1972 when I was a graduate student at Harvard. And I fell in love with this exotic habitat. It's called Florida scrub. The name sounds like it isn't much, but it's the most endangered ecosystem in Florida. It's high ground, so you can build on it. You know, it's great for golf courses or retirement communities, but it has incredible number of endemic organisms in it. But Florida, like a few other places, like California, those communities evolved with fire. Fire was part of the history that produced the species that come together in those habitats. So as we fragment the landscape and we make the little parcels smaller and smaller and more isolated, fires don't work the way they used to work. And so we run into situations like we see in California where we have these incredibly long unburned areas, and when they do burn, it is a real nightmare because they are incredible infernos. In Florida, I think we've gotten a little better handle on it, and we started a prescription burn program at the facility I work at, Archibald Biological Station, near Venus, Florida, back in 1977. And we have a prescription burn program that is trying to mimic what nature did. Nature can't work in those small fragments the way it used to. And so what we've been doing over the years is trying, and I work with a number of people. It's not just, you know, one person's project. This is a lot of people who do everything from bugs to birds to plants and nutrient cycling, the whole bit. And my role has been really to look at the plant community changes and insect community changes over time. From that, we're able to make better and better prescriptions. So just like trying to get the right medications for somebody who has a health issue, we want to try to get the right prescriptions so that we can maximize the biodiversity. We want to try to promote and preserve the biodiversity that's there. And, you know, for the most part, I think we're accomplishing that now. So it's a good project.
So that's, you choose a section of land and just kind of light it up?
Yeah, it's actually,
for lack of a better description of
it's
on my
actually
part.
it's pretty scientifically done, because we have actually at Archibald we've got two different tracts of land, but together about 19,000 acres, and all of that is pretty natural landscape. One portion of it is actually a cattle ranch area, but it's native, got a lot of native prairie. The area up on the ridge is completely natural. This is an area that the only thing ever done there were some longleaf pines and slash pines were harvested from it. But beyond that, they are intact, really beautiful communities. And so what we do is figure out for each type of vegetation what would be a typical fire return cycle. Some habitats, we call this one, it's a wet area, we call them bayheads. 50 to 100 year return time, you know, and variability is important. You don't want to do it 50 years, that's not the idea. But other habitats, like some of the dry prairies, probably 1 to 4 or 5 years is very typical. So the prescriptions vary by where the areas are. We also allow lightning burns to work within our system, as long as they're not going to burn out of our system. You know, we don't want to burn the neighbors.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up, real quick, you know, with your involvement with nature, where's your favorite spot in the valley to go and commune with nature?
There are a lot of them, but I have to admit I'm real lucky because I live up on Shamokin Mountain and am surrounded by a forest, and I, you know, looking out my window is really great. But there are so many vistas. I mean, this kind of thing, Shikellamy Bluff is
it's great.
Tremendous. The Montanan wetland area is absolutely tremendous. I mean, we've just got such special places. Moan Mill up in the northwestern corner. I love that Moan Mill area. So Snyder County has some great spots, you know, like Tall Timbers, Snyder Middleswarth State Park.
You ever been up to Mount Pisgah?
Boy, I have.
That's where I got married.
I was just
I love
by
that.
there
It's a beautiful
Saturday.
spot.
In fact, yeah. yeah, it's a great spot. We are so fortunate, to be able to live here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, Abe.
Justin.
And join us next time for another edition of One on One.
Thanks for watching One on One. Be sure to tune in next week for another installment.